Feel crazy. All right, come on, laptop. It's like taking forever just to go live on my end for some reason. There it goes. Welcome to the Church of Mabus radio show. It's Friday night. My voice is changing into Jack Nicholson on the full moon. That's right. It's Jack Nicholson time. First off, we got Wham here with us tonight.
Hi.
Wham's representing. We got Michael Kozlowski. Say it one time
That's
for
pretty
us
good.
all so I don't mess it up.
It's Kozlowski.
Kozlowski. I'm
Kozlowski.
Georgia, so I'll mess it up. Kozlowski. I'm Georgia, so I will mess it up. But anyway, I needed to first off deadskypublishing.com. That's dead DEAD skypublishing.com, and they were just on last week, and they put out splatter westerns, and it's like Weird West horror novels. Like imagine Clint Eastwood, Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, but there's weird zombie Wendigo cannibals. Like the best way to describe it. I dig
Okay.
it. I like it. But anyway, they have a new Weird West anthology coming out now. Going Back is actually in that. I believe
Oh,
Joe
nice.
R. Lansdale as well is in it. I think I'd have to double check, but they've both been on the show, Joe and Al. And but they're putting that out, and that's deadskypublishing.com, and you can go to Amazon and all their stuff's on there. But I really love Weird West, and there's just one more Weird West book that another publisher sent me, and we'll get started. This is from Nightfire Tour. Weird West apparently is having a renaissance. But this book is called Red Rabbit by Alex Grecian, and he's a New York Times best-selling author. And he just put out a Weird West book called uh, Red Rabbit. Want it for witchcraft, dead or alive. It's one of the blurbs. But it's basically eerie, exhilarating, and enduring generation paints the old American West and Wicked, Johnny Compton. But it's Weird West, that's Red Rabbit. And then the other place is Dead Sky Publishing. And you're listening to United Public Radio 107.7 FM New Orleans. And last week we had a whole Weird West show. If you missed that, check it out with Chad Lutz. And that was a good one and weird. We just talked about the history of all that Weird Westness. But good to have you here, Michael.
Good
Visible
to be
Ink
here.
Press, and I've been working with them for many moons. Like, God, they put out great books. I know I've been getting their books for a very long time. Maybe over 10 years. And we've had a lot of their guests on. And your book is American Ghost Stories, True Tales for
Hmm.
All 50 States. And
That's
forward
it.
by Richard Estep, who's been on. And is this your first book?
No, it's my first
Is
kind of
this your.
ghost story book, but it's not my first book. I write more horror fiction, actually. So I have a couple of novels published
Nice, nice.
through Raven's Tale, and I have a collection of horror short stories that have been published various magazines and whatnot, and I just collected those. That's all available on Amazon or on my website, which is MikeKozlowski.com. I'll say that several times tonight, so be sure to write it down at one of those months.
Yeah, go ahead. Definitely. Definitely get those plugs in. And so what got you started on the subject of paranormal? First off, have you ever had anything paranormal happen to you that maybe caused that? Like like what
No, I
happened with the
wouldn't.
horror stuff too got you into all that? And I guess kind of like some background.
Sure. So the horror stuff, I'll credit probably first to my mom for giving me my first Stephen King book, which most horror aficionados my age, that's probably where they got their start reading a Stephen King book way too young. It was Pet Cemetery, and I think I was 11, and I'm pretty sure she bought it for me because it had a cat on the front. She knew I liked cats, so I don't know if she. There goes my dog. So mad because I just mentioned cats, apparently. But anyway, oh my gosh, where do they start right now? Um,
Pet
So I got
Cemetery's a rough
into
one. I think I read that in sixth grade.
Yeah,
I think
that's
I read.
that's intense.
Yeah,
yeah,
I think I read Pet Cemetery in sixth grade.
yeah, it's not a book for an 11-year-old.
Right.
But I loved it, and next by the end of the year, I was in like the Stephen King book club. They send you all the hardcovers and all that cool stuff, and just kind of went down that path with the reading, and I read everything, all genres really, but that's kind of was my main focus, I guess. And I really wasn't into writing until I moved to Australia. Probably it was about 15, 16 years ago, and decided to write a book, kind of a little memoir about that. And that got published. I had a blast doing it. The research was fun. The writing was fun. And we moved back to the U.S., and I wanted to write some more stuff, and I wasn't moving anywhere else. So they say, write what you love. They also say write what you know, but I don't buy that one as much. But write what you love, and I love the horror stuff, so that's the direction I went.
What got you moving to Australia? What happened to that? That's a big adventure.
My day job that pays the bills. I'm an engineer, and I took a job over there just for the adventure. So it was great. We had a great time. Met some great people.
Yeah, Australia seems like it would be a fun place. I mean, they've got their own ghost stories there too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, indeed.
Are you having a delay, Jeffrey?
Definitely. I've interviewed Stephen Strong on the Aboriginals. Yeah, it kind of seems like it. I don't know why, but
yeah, it seems to be like a delay.
But does it seem like that on your end that I'm having one?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
I don't know exactly. Well, let's see. So I guess what state do you want to start with? Obviously, we don't want to be here all night telling a story from every state because we don't want to give away all the book. But what are some of the states that you or the stories that you love to tell, or if you want to start with something like that?
Sure. So the Michigan one, of course, that one in this book is actually very personal. It's based on, I mentioned pre-show when we were chatting that a family that lives up north, rural area of Michigan in the Thumb, and in a town called Forster, and that's where that story comes from. And it's a legend about a girl. It's actually very popular in Michigan. A few books have been written just on the legend of Minnie Quay, who back in the late 1800s, early 1900s period, was young teenage girl, 16-ish, fell in love with a sailor. Parents didn't like the relationship, kept them apart, the whole heartbreak, Romeo and Juliet kind of thing. Sailor went off to sea, boat capsized, he died. She's, tormented and throws herself off of the dock and into the Lake Huron and perishes in the cold, stormy waters, and then comes back to haunt the town. So, but it's a story that I've known, since I was a kid. Probably the first ghost story that I can think of that I heard, because everybody in the family knew it, everybody in the area knew it. So it was just, you just kind of knew, we're aware all the time. So that's probably my favorite story in the book. I don't want to give the whole of it away as far as what happens to people and all that, but it's kind of your girl tempting, young lovers sort of story, right? And you get into sort of one of the things, writing the ghost story books, and kind of going down that path as I got more into the paranormal things away from fiction a little, is that you see those repetitive stories, right? You see like the woman in white, or the heartbroken suicide lover, or for the bride whose husband didn't show up or whatever. It's always those sort of very popular. You'll find one in every state. I could have wrote 50 stories about the white woman.
That is a very common motif. That is although sometimes there's a real story behind.
Oh, for sure.
Behind those apparitions, but it's interesting that those become sort of a trope, a way of talking about or describing the haunted nature of something
Right.
that maybe isn't solved or is tragic in some way.
And a lot of, I mean, there's a certain amount of things, right? Traumas, energies, emotions that, are thought to cause, hauntings and
Mm-hmm.
apparitions and things like that. So you have, things that are repetitive, that just
Right.
are by their nature. The things that cause ghosts supposedly are, similar all the time. So,
Right. It seems to be that way anyway.
a suicide or a murderer that got away with it.
Yeah, yeah, well, yeah. I mean, when I was reading through some of your stories, there's I live in the Hudson Valley, which, as I'm sure you recognize, that's a place that's kind of known for ghost
Mm-hmm.
stories a little
Sure.
bit. Well, there is a story that comes out of the northern part of this area, up by Troy, which is now a suburb of Albany, and it's the story of the unsolved murder, and it's a true unsolved murder of this young woman named Hazel Drew. And I don't know if you know the story behind her,
No, I'm not
but
familiar. I don't think.
yeah, but well, what's interesting is that she was murdered, I think, in like 1906 or something like that, or her body was found, and there's actually been like this, a couple of books written about the whole investigation and everything. But what people there remember is the story of a white woman,
Right.
appearing along this certain dirt road that still exists, that's close to the place where her body was found. She was found in a pond up in this one area, this very rural area. And what's interesting about that story is that story was heard by a guy named Mark Frost, who, I don't know if you know who Mark Frost is, but he's the guy who, along with David Lynch, created Twin Peaks.
Okay.
And that story of Hazel Drew informed big chunks of how of the whole story behind Laura Palmer,
Right.
and
Okay.
and her murder and all that kind of stuff. So he in some ways, Mark Frost was trying to convey the eeriness of the story, of that same kind of story, in a different way. And so some of these stories can be very influential,
No. Yeah.
to places and to people, So
It's funny you bring up Twin Peaks as a guilty admission. I've never watched it, but I just started.
oh yeah.
I just started. I have like 2 episodes in.
Okay. Now, are you seeing the versions with the log lady?
Lovely.
That you would know what I meant if you
Okay.
had,
Maybe not.
because in the original broadcast, each episode is prefaced by the log lady.
Okay. I don't.
And the log lady sort of acts as a kind of Greek chorus,
Okay.
introducing the vibe of the episode. So if there's any way you can find episodes, you may have to just like get the DVDs or something, or borrow
Right.
the DVDs, so that you can see the log light. It adds a whole different level of eerie. It's
Right,
kind of like,
yeah.
I mean, it's good without her. You can watch the episodes without her, but if you have those episodes, if you have her beforehand, it's like, oh my God, it completely ups the creep.
All right. Okay. I'll take a look. I have
So
to. I'll name drop for a second. I just started watching it because Josh Mallerman, probably familiar with, or Bird Box, and he's a Michigan guy as well. And we're acquaintances. I'd like to say friends, but I don't want to be too fresh.
yeah,
So,
right.
but he just was posting that he just like a
familiar.
whole Lynch
My Facebook.
marathon. So. They did Twin Peaks and all that, so I was like, okay, I guess I'll do it.
Just think of it. I mean, it's a good period piece, and the thing about Twin Peaks is that it's based on a ghost story.
Right.
It's based on this ghost story that's kind of brought to a modern period, like the 1990s, and it really set the stage for a lot of different things that followed. You know, it was the first CSI kind of show. Without it, you would not have X-Files. I mean, once you get into it, you'll realize just how incredibly formative it was, even though the first series was not very long, you know.
Right.
But it was incredibly important show. But it's based on a ghost story.
That's interesting. I have to follow that up for sure.
You know, it's and so your ghost stories were reminding me of this. You know, you describe them very well. You tell the stories well.
Thank you.
And that's important. You have to tell these stories well.
Yeah, and I think it helps, you know, being a fiction writer as well. You know, you can, and I won't say that, you know, I didn't make anything up, but you know, you embellish, you make it a little more colorful, you know, and sometimes it's just the wording, you know. So that, I think that was advantageous for the book. So what
kind of research did you do?
A lot was online, and calls and messaging with people that I could get a hold of, and you know, researching several, you know, stories, old newspapers, all that good stuff. There's clippings in the book and some of the stories, and then when I could, and it was less than a dozen probably. You know, I just don't have the means to travel to everywhere, but I went and visited and had my experiences. You know, one of my favorite ones was in Kentucky. The story there is the Bobby Mackey music bar there. And that was, we went down and we were going down for something else. So I was able to, we went and visited just on a regular night while the bar was open, and, you know, and hung out. And then I ended up talking to waitresses and bartenders and whatnot. And then I was able to work with the paranormal group that operates down there and gives tours, and got a private tour kind of on our way back through, and, you know, got some in-depth, you know, stories, and you know, it was really nice. So, and then, you know, you kind of have some experiences, you know, and I'm, for the record, I lean skeptic, right? That's my kind of, you know, I'm sort of the, what's his name, from 1408, right? Stephen King's story there. I'm the John Cusack sort of guy, right? Looking for the real ones. So, and I don't discount anybody's experiences or anything like that. You know, it's just, I'm waiting for the one that convinces me, right? So, but, you know, you still have an experience, right? So at Bobby Mackey's, just, you know, you're telling these stories, you're walking around this dark bar, nobody's there, everything's, you know, everything's creaking, the bar's, you know, hasn't changed since the 70s probably, you know, it looks like it's about to fall into the river behind it, you know, so and there's all these weird noises and shadows and things, and, you know, you'll just get that chill up your spine, or you'll hear something over here, well, you know, maybe that was something.
yeah, well, you can certainly psych yourself up into stuff. That's especially, I think groups can do that. You know, if you get a bunch of people into a place, I think that you can do that. I think it's pretty easy. But, you know, have you had any experiences individually that you kind of wondered about?
Nothing that really stuck with me. I mean, when I was younger, I had friends that you know, we would call, you know, psychics, and we would do the Ouija board, and, you know, and there were moments in the moment where I was, you know, scared or what's going on, but you know, I'd like to. I'm an investigative sort, and I don't take too much just at face value. So, you know, I need to be pretty convinced, and whether I believed it in the moment, I either talked myself out of it later, or you know, you know, that sort of thing. So,
right. Well, you know, that makes a certain kind of sense. Can you hear us, Jeffrey? Are you doing okay?
Yeah, I can hear everything fine, but is there still like a delay on my end? You're saying?
Yeah. There seems to be a little bit of a delay. Yeah.
Now, the only thing it could be is the internet and this laptop.
I'm sorry, what, Michael?
Do what now?
I just didn't want to cut him off. I'll wait a second till we.
What'd you say, Jeffrey?
Oh, I was just saying, I mean, this is the same headset I use on the other PC. So the only thing I could think that it could be is the internet and this laptop causing the delay. That's the only thing it could be. It's the same exact headset. So
no, it's not. Usually delays are not caused by headsets. So, you know, It's probably the
It's
laptop.
probably internet. Yeah. Annoying. Well, what were
So
you gonna say, Michael?
I was
Yeah.
going to ask Wham and yourself, have you had, supernatural experiences that, have stuck with you or that have convinced you of, the reality of ghosts
Well,
or
I've
the
had
opposite, had ones that have come
I've
true?
had I've had weird experiences. My whole thing is that I think people have lots of experiences. I don't know what a ghost is. I mean, the popular definition of a ghost is that it's a soul or a spirit or whatever that would be,
Right.
that's left over after someone's died. I mean, I guess that's like the common,
Sure. Yep.
a
Right.
definition. But the truth is, we don't really know what that is, and I don't know what that is. It's kind of like explaining an unknown with an unknown. You know what I mean? It's like we have these experiences and we put labels on them to try to get a sense of, so we can call them something.
Right.
I have had some odd experiences. I mean, I have my own blog, podcast thing that I do personally, and my own website, and I talk about some of the experiences that I've had. I've lived in fact, I'm writing one now. I've lived in 3 houses that I would consider haunted, whatever that means.
Okay.
In the sense that, and I have a particular definition for why I'm talking about these particular houses. In these houses, in each one of these houses, I had my own experiences, but I'm calling them haunted because other people had experiences in them independently of me, and talked to me about their experiences.
Okay.
So in other words, it wasn't just me having them, it was other people having them. And sometimes our experiences would intersect. But oddly enough, they, at least in the 3 places that I'm writing about right now, they didn't very much. Although we would have similar experiences independently and then talk about them.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And some of the experiences were kind of, I don't have a lot of visual stuff. That's not really, if I see something, it's really unusual.
Okay.
And I think it's because I'm kind of skeptical too, and I also don't want to see anything. There's a part of me, it's like,
Right.
no,
That's probably part of it, right?
no,
Not receptive to it. It's probably shielding.
right, exactly. I think that the thing that, but I do have I have a good, I tend to hear stuff that is unusual. And I also have other tactile experiences. I think the only thing that I ever, other than the time that I saw something, and this is not ghost related, the time that I saw something that I can't identify, and I can only say that it looked like what we call Bigfoot,
Okay.
whatever that is.
Okay.
Which scared the crap out of me, by the way. The only time I've ever seen anything like ghost like, that probably just made me stop and not understand at all what was going on. I was This is one of the haunted houses that I'll be talking about. It was the house of a friend of mine, and she tended to have, this is the way she described herself. She was, a kind of a traditional witch, and she tended, that's what she called herself, and
Sure.
she tended to, um, have interactions with the dead, as she put it, that they would come to her, souls that were lost would come to her and she would send them on. That's just kind of how she talked about her experiences. And so as a result of that, her house often had, reportedly, and this is according to her daughter and other people who lived with her, obviously, a lot of weird crap that would occasionally go on. Well, I happened to be at her house one weekend when there was a lot of activity going on in the house, and there was some specific reasons for that, which I'm going to write about, but I don't want to all get into, that had accelerated some of these experiences that people were having. And I did experience some of what people were talking about. Like, so one of the things that would happen is that and I'd been in this house before, so I kind of, I knew where everything was, and I knew kind of where things should be and not be, and stuff like that. And you would walk down, I was walking down the hall, and I'd just be walking down the hall, and then all of a sudden you would feel this. I mean, it happened unexpectedly. It would feel like somebody or something was right up against you, and it would feel exactly as if you had bumped into somebody. That's literally how it felt. But there would be nobody there. But it would almost be like you would feel like somebody deliberately bumped into you.
Right.
It was that's very unnerving to have that experience.
For sure, yeah.
And very physical, and yet nobody's there. So that was part of one of the things that I experienced there. I think the thing that really freaked me out, though, was that at one point there were 5 of us in the living room. This was in broad daylight, so it wasn't at night. We were talking. It was there was a lit candle. My friend had lit a candle in a candlestick that was kind of across the room. Her daughter was at one side of the room. She had lit the candle on the other side of the room, and the candle was, like a prayer candle. It was, for calmness or whatever, that kind of stuff. And there were like 3 other of us, and we were all just sort of scattered around the room, and we were talking. And then all of a sudden all of us together heard this kind of cracking pop noise. And it was coming from the direction of the candle that was lit. It was in like a candle, like a candle holder. It was like a taper. I don't know, your standard, 12-inch taper, whatever. Okay. And what I saw was, and at first I didn't know what had happened. For some reason, my mind read, when I saw it happening, I was obviously trying to understand. I thought that maybe the candlestick had become hot and broken and snapped, and something had, how when that happens sometimes, candles can kind of explode a little bit. But it turned out that that's not what had happened. It turned out that what the popping was the actual candle itself. It had not burned down. The candle itself had broken in half, just standing there. It had broken in half, and both parts, it was like something had broken them. You can break a candle like that. It had broken in half, and both parts of the candle flew across the room. But the weirdest one was that the top part that was lit remained lit, and it flew across the room right at the daughter. I mean, and kind of in slow motion. It didn't go boom, like that. It kind of went. And I remember just standing there going, my brain was not computing it at all. And then as it got close to her, it accelerated, and she saw it, and she dodged, like this, and it hit the wall behind her. And we just all sat there going, okay. that was our response. And I think that probably scared me more than, because I have no explanation for that.
Right.
I don't know what that was.
Right.
And so, but it wasn't like a ghost, but it was like, sure. it was a poltergeist. It was a poltergeist event. And so poltergeist events tend to freak me out a little bit.
Yeah, I would see that. And I believe, like, I would say right now, if somebody were, to put me on the spot, I'd say, no, I don't believe in ghosts, but I believe in energy,
Mm-hmm.
and the ghost thing is a lot to do with my own, personal beliefs regarding, the afterlife and things like that. And whatever.
Right. Exactly.
They just don't jive, right? Like, ghosts don't fit into my narrative. So,
right. Exactly.
But an energy, energy does. So, things that could be explained in that way, like sort of like a repetitive sort of, the ghost on the loop sort of idea. It's just more of a real, right? It's not interactive. It's just you're seeing some flash from the past or something that's, multiversing us or something. Whatever, however that works.
Right. Well, right.
Something like that could be, energy related somehow, or even, orbs or things like that. Even hearing voices or something, I guess, could be, right? It's all waves and, there may be science behind it is kind of my point.
Right. No, I agree.
Not so much a supernatural sort of thing,
Yeah, I mean, if we think about the supernatural, is generally termed the supernatural as simply being something we haven't quite explained yet.
Right, just haven't figured it out. Sure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so yeah, that's sort of where I come down on this kind of thing too. It's not that I don't believe that there can be communication with all of that stuff. I mean, but to me, it's like, number one, I don't know why ghosts would want to necessarily communicate with me.
Right.
It's like, but on another level, it's like, of course, there could be some types of communication, because if you think of, I think of like consciousness as sort of being everywhere. So if that's possibly the case, then there might be kind of all levels of communication that might occur,
Right.
across time or across, different dimensions or something like that. I mean, I tend to think like the house that I live in now, I don't call it haunted because I haven't experienced any kind of regular things here that would tell me that, but there have been some odd things that have happened here, I think it's because it's an old house. This
Right,
house
yeah.
is over 100 years old. It sits on groundwater. I mean, it sits right on a well, right on a spring. We have like 5 springs on the property. So water's everywhere. A number of people have died in the house naturally, nobody unnaturally. It's a house that's had like a normal lifespan.
And all those things, every experience is leaving a mark, right?
Exactly.
Right? Leaving some sort of energy or some sort of something behind, and maybe we cross over those things.
Right. Or maybe even the house itself, sometimes I think like houses, especially old houses, they just accumulate all that stuff
Right.
from different people. And it's sort of like a memory box.
I like the idea of it accumulating so much that every once in a while it has to spit something out
Or express itself,
Right. It's like, I got to get this out, so this way you get a ghost.
Right. Or maybe it just becomes, like the occult. If you're familiar with the occult idea of the egregore, there's sort of develops. Yeah. Is that what you're going to say?
I was going to mention it earlier, actually, when you were talking about, people's experiences and how they see things and whatever, and sort of that collective consciousness, and why, you have certain tropes, right? Like, 'cause that's just what's in your head. So you might think, if I'm going to see this, I know this story about a woman that was going to get married, and on her wedding day, she's in her dress and she's all ready, and her husband gets killed, and she commits suicide because she's so distraught. You're gonna think of a white witch, right? You're gonna think of a woman in white, right? And other stories of women in white, so that they're gonna influence you. So, that sort of collective thought, and just those stories. It's an interesting, the egregore, the idea that story can create an actual sentient being, sort of, right?
Yeah.
One theory is that enough of us can think about something that it actually manifests.
Yeah, that's like the whole Slender Man thing.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
That there is a kind of energy that has collectively created,
Right.
perhaps, maybe intermittently,
Right.
an entity like that. Yeah,
And that's the stuff that, though I'm not somebody who thinks I'm going to find a ghost, still when I'm walking through a place or I'm doing, research or whatever, I'm still getting chills. I'm still expecting something to get me from around the corner, until it doesn't, right? Just like, it's like a haunted house. I know that nothing in there is real. like a Halloween haunted house, not an
Well,
actual.
right, exactly.
But I know nobody, they're all in costumes and that, but I still, poop myself a little when they jump out. So,
You're still susceptible to the jump scare, right?
you're right. So I wanted to say, and that's what makes it fun, even if I never am convinced there's a ghost or never prove that ghosts aren't real or whatever.
Right.
The journey's the fun part.
Well, yeah. Well, and you get to, and I mean, that's one of the things I noticed when I was reading through your books. I mean, your stories here, is that what I liked about it was that you give a little bit of a history of each place.
Right.
It's brief, but you give a little bit of a history, because that history is actually really important, because it sets the context for the story. And because these stories, even the ones that are tropes, they don't appear in isolation. They're
Right.
part of a larger milieu of account. That's what interested me about the Hudson Valley. The Hudson Valley is known as a place where lots of different things happen, and that has become so much a part of the place here, that of especially the mid Hudson Valley, but even the further environs, like down towards New York City and up towards Albany, that there are many communities that they just expect stuff to happen.
Right.
And when stuff does, they just are kind of like, it's part of who we are,
Right. Well, and like on one that everybody would know, it'd be like Salem, right? Like,
right.
You just expect there's witches there. It's haunted. That's just what it is. That's But if you didn't know the history of that, then it wouldn't make no sense.
Right.
So
Exactly.
the history is important, right? The story, And people, I think, when you have an experience, it could be, you can go either way. It can be, this happened, this person died, we had this, whatever tragedy, so we should be seeing a ghost, and you're kind of looking around for a ghost, right? Or something happens, and then you go backwards and you go, well, why did where did this come from? And then you go searching for the history, and
right,
what could be causing this,
Yeah. How did this translate itself? I mean, one of the stories that I was interested in. Let's see here if I can find it here.
It's I got my cheat sheet too, because I forget things myself.
Well, you have so many.
You write enough things.
it's the story about the Idaho Tuberculosis Hospital and Dr. Hart. And that's very interesting about who Dr. Hart was. Because that's like one of those little details that, some people would say, why should that be part of the story? Right. You know what I mean? Why should that be part of the story? And to me, it's like, well, part of the reason why that might be important in the story is because that lends an entirely different sort of emotional component to this person.
Right. And I thought I tried to be pretty diverse in the stories. Like I said, I could have found 50. Every prison is haunted. Every tuberculosis ward is haunted. Every mental institution is haunted. Every lighthouse is haunted. Every school is probably haunted. So I could have wrote a book just about lighthouses. Because there's one everywhere.
Right.
And the same way that I could have wrote 50 women in white stories or whatever. But I tried to vary those stories, so we had a lot of diversity just in the place, the location, the type of haunting, whether it was a poltergeist or whatever. And then also not just make them all tragedies, right? It's like sometimes it was a good ghost, like this ghost was because nice things happened or whatever. So
right. Well, and in this particular instance with Dr. Hart, I mean, for the listeners who don't know, I won't give the whole story away, but Dr. Hart appears to have been an individual. This person was assigned female at birth, was born a female, but understood themselves to be a male. And so at a certain point in their life, they had a hysterectomy and lived the rest of their lives. And this is in the early 20th century. So they lived the rest of their lives as a male. And they were a doctor. They had been a doctor previous to that, right?
Yes.
As a female, And so this person was what we would now call a trans person, a trans man, and
And had become and was a doctor as a male and was found out to be trans and moved, was kind of
yeah,
running
and
away.
as a result of that,
Yeah.
their life was kind of disrupted by that a few times, but was a very dedicated doctor, and was well known to be a dedicated doctor. And what's interesting to me about this story is that, as you put it, if the ghost of Dr. Hart is still in this tuberculosis hospital, and this hospital became known as a very good hospital, largely because of the efforts of Dr. Hart, then this person is a ghost, not because of the difficulties and the intensities of their life as a trans man, but because of their dedication.
Right.
Yeah,
and that story, Dr. Hart doesn't really interact. Like they see a doctor, if we assume it's Dr. Hart, and there's no interaction with it. It's almost like it's the ghost is too focused on their mission and their duty to be bothered with being a ghost.
Right. Well, and it's sort of like that whole recording thing
Right.
that you were
Yeah.
talking
Like
about,
yeah.
yeah. So it's sort of like this, but part of course, with this person's story, this internal story would be their, I mean, every trans person can tell you that transition and living with that and the implications of that, there's obviously a lot of emotional stuff that goes with that. There's a lot of intensity that goes with that, both in the person themselves and in some of the opposition that they will encounter in the controversy surrounding that. And so all of those things, emotion is considered to be a very important component of what might create a haunting.
Right. And that was a story. I'm glad you brought that story up. I chose that story largely because of the Dr. Hart component, just because I thought it was refreshing and inspiring even.
Right.
And given our our political times and everything else, it just felt right to put it in. And when I was compiling the book, I probably started with anywhere from 5 to 10 stories in each state. Some were well known, some were word of mouth that I'd gotten from people, some were somewhere in the middle. And then I just tried to narrow them down. I could probably write 3 more books like this, with just stories that I would be happy to have included, but you got to whittle it down eventually. So some were really popular, like, I wanted people to know some of them, like the birdcage in the area of Arizona, Tombstone. Most people know the story of Tombstone, at least the history, if not things, right? The Winchester House, a lot of people know that in California. And then I wanted some that were kind of middle of the road and people locally, regionally probably know it. The Mini Quay one in Michigan, Papa Blanca in New Mexico. Those ones, some people know. And then I tried to find a few obscure ones that like one person knows, just to make it interesting. So that was a lot of fun of compiling it too, and just making it, as diverse as I could.
Well, yeah, but it stands out as a really interesting story, and it is interesting what you say about every tuberculosis hospital is haunted, because the reason I say that is because until very recently, I taught part-time at a community college here in the Hudson Valley, Dutchess County Community College, and the college itself, the buildings, were originally a tuberculosis hospital itself.
There's ghosts there for sure.
Yeah, right. And there were. I mean, the campus is now much larger than the hospital was,
sure.
but the 2 original tuberculosis hospital buildings are still there. And what is interesting is that when I first started teaching there, and I didn't know this, when I first started teaching there, I found out that those 2 buildings, one is the admin building, the administration building, and the other, and that's where like the critical cases and terminal
Okay.
cases were
Right.
kept. And then, but a building I taught in a lot was a building where the patients that were, they knew that tuberculosis couldn't be cured, but the less sick patients were. But what's interesting is that people have reported ghosts in both buildings. And I didn't know that at the time when I first started teaching there, although I did have kind of a weird experience in one of the buildings once, but I just attributed it to being teaching a late night class and maybe not recognizing, something. I didn't even, that was before I even knew that they were supposed to be haunted. But anyway, so it's true. All tuberculosis hospitals are
Everyone,
haunted.
every prison, every lighthouse.
Every that where people are miserable.
Yes. You
Hey,
live alone in a place, you're probably going to be a ghost.
let Jeffrey speak now.
I was taking the whole show over.
yes. Tell me if my delay gets any better, because I turned off stuff and I've been researching it. Why it's the internet that's causing it for some reason. But let me know if it gets better or worse or whatever. But what can you tell us about the Hawaiian night marchers? Because that sounds very fascinating, especially with all the horror that's been going on there. That's so traumatizing just to even read about. Like I saw one story of some girl talking about there were charred family members left in reclining chairs in their yard that refused to go, and they're just like crispy in their chairs like that. It's just crazy. So I'd love to hear a spiritual side. What could you tell us about the night marchers?
All right. Well, the night marchers were they're spirit warriors. They're typically ancestors of the native peoples there, and they were the warriors for one of the kings of Hawaii, who now still march in the throughout the islands. Mostly, I think Maui's where they're mostly seen. And you're supposed to just kind of not pay attention to them, look away. If you're an ancestor, you're okay. If not, you could be, taken by them and, forever doomed to be one of the warriors marching along. Interesting, I guess, I hadn't really thought about that story in relation to the fires and everything. I'd be interested to see what some of the the native peoples might have to say about that, and if there's if they feel like there's any sort of connection, I guess. And I mean, I know they know it's a natural disaster or whatever, but those are the kind of things where stories come out, right? Like that you see them marching through the flames or down the mountain.
Right. Well, either that or you get these weird conspiracy theories about it, like it was started by laser rockets or something, it's like, no, it wasn't, but yeah, I mean, I have actually been hearing, some, reports by, native Hawaii's, I guess Hawaii natives is what I should say. Indigenous Hawaiians, that kind of it's more of a sense of irony about it all,
Right.
I know the night marchers thing sounds kind of similar like skinwalkers, but I don't think they would be considered the night marchers evil. Hopefully not. But I know the skinwalkers like come for you, and you have to kill someone you love, and they'll take you and weird stuff like that.
Yeah, the skinwalkers, they're definitely, that's like if you've done terrible things, like usually it's like cannibalism, right? That you end up turning into a skinwalker or all the other names that you're not supposed to say. Because it's bad luck. The Wendigos and things like that. But the night marchers are more protective, more of the island. They're not evil. They're just kind of on their mission, right? And as long as you sort of respect them, you're fine. They don't come hunting, I guess.
And you asked earlier about our paranormal experiences. I don't want to go into my stuff because it'll even bore me. I've told it so many times. But uh, basically, the reason we do the show is because I had a lot of stuff happen when I was younger up till now that ranged from UFO to ghosts, and it seemed to revolve around tragedy and, and trauma. And when I was 17, I had testicular cancer. I had to go through chemo. I lost one, which was really crappy. And a few years later, my dad died. And it seemed like all that was a combination that attracted things on a lot of different levels, from UFO to even seeing some weird beings that were strange. And I've seen beings of light many times with my physical eyes completely sober. I've seen stuff while partying too, so let's not rule that out. But a lot of it seems to. I have a big interest in how, like, a shamanic death and how trauma, like, I compare it to, and I try not to be dishonorable to Odin, but losing an eye, which an eye to me would be a little worse, maybe. Yeah, probably, because you just couldn't see. But I think something about that tragedy and that pain opened my senses. And I started doing this show to figure out I went crazy from it. And I still have PTSD from some of it. And what's really alarming now about all of it is a lot of these experiences you see on Skinwalker Ranch and beyond Skinwalker Ranch. I've had a lot of that similar phenomenon happen to me, and they just had a weird show with that Chris Bledsoe. I don't want to get into this because I've already got into it so much, but look up this book if you get a chance. Chris Bledsoe, UFO of God, and it's in the Christian section on Amazon, and which is really weird. But he was on Beyond Skinwalker Ranch, and he can summon UFOs, and he was there with Colonel John Alexander and two CIA analysts, and that whole book has blurbs from CIA and Colonel John Alexander, and it's about this dude that can summon UFOs. The phenomenon that he's had happen to him, I've done the same. I don't know if I could go do it right now, but I've seen weird stuff and asked it to move. It would move. I've seen two beings of light leave my house like they were in it and fly through the roof and go into the heavens. And I think maybe those were like luminous beings of light or deceased loved ones. I don't know what they were. But what's weird about that book and how I'm tying it into mine is it's like they're now commercializing Christian UFO summoning. If you go to Amazon and look up UFO of God by Chris Bledsoe, people are under it going crazy, saying they're having the same phenomenon that he's having it. And I've been having it since I'm in my early 20s. So now it feels like how a goth would feel if you see a goth section at Target. That's how I feel. It's like, but as far as the UFO of God book, it's basically, even Colonel John Alexander says on a blurb, you can be like us now. Like, they want everyone to get outside and interact and have these experiences, which really creeps me out. That there's so many government people involved with Skinwalker Ranch in that book. Just look it up. It's a rabbit hole itself. UFO of God on Amazon. Like,
UFO
I'm
of
still
God.
trying to read it.
That
It's
just
like,
freaks me right out.
I guess
I'm
it's so
sorry.
alarming because there's so many. Yeah, isn't that kind of egomaniac? That's
Put
kind of
together Christians and
egomaniacal.
aliens.
That's the thing with these experiences too. It can go to your head. Yeah, that's what they're doing. They're trying to make it like a thing, like Barbie. Like, go over there and just it's crazy. But anyway, I've had a whole bunch of phenomenon happen, and that's why I do the show. When I was younger, I had trouble getting interviews, said a prayer, had UFO experiences where we saw these red firelight things in the sky, and my brother and nephew saw them, and then the next thing you know, I was on the phone with Stanton Friedman, nuclear physicist, Nick Pope, Ministry of Defense, and it was like the UFO sighting. It was almost like aliens helped me get interviews. So I think this is about raising consciousness on a lot of different levels. But that's basically why we do the show. I had a lot of weird shit happen to me. Wham has too. But that's basically
Definitely,
why we're here.
definitely trauma and tragedy seem to attract those things, and people that have had traumatic experiences, not just ghosts, but whether it's aliens or seem to be more open to that for whatever reason. So yeah, I can see that those early experiences would definitely influence that sort of thing.
Definitely. And I'm curious, if you read UFO of God, would you have an experience? So that's an experiment.
Well, maybe I'll read it and I'll
That
try
would
it.
be
I'll give it a
weird.
shot. I'm up for anything.
But
See what happens.
Will it make me
it
believe in
might
aliens or
happen.
God?
I'm more worried about they're trying to get. Yeah, both. But I'm more. It's weird because it's like they're trying to get people outside to see if they have superpowers interacting with this stuff. I'm worried they're going to swoop down and take people to some lab, and you never see yourself again. I'm scared to go out there and interact now that the government's more involved, which I think they've always been involved with it. But they're going to try to grab you and take you to Montauk or Stranger Things or something. That's creepy. I mean, I wouldn't rule that out with them. That's for sure. I'm not going to go out there and be their Superman playing with that stuff. I did it before, but I don't know if I could do it now. But it's weird. I mean, basically, there's people under that book saying they can do the same thing Chris Bledsoe can do now, summon UFOs, and has 5 stars on Amazon in the Christian section with tons of reviews. It's weird. Those shows, Skinwalker Ranch and Beyond Skinwalker Ranch, those are really weird. There's so many government spooks on those shows. They had a round table with former governor of Utah, state attorney general of Utah, Robert Bigelow personnel that used to be on the ranch. And it's so many government spooks. They basically, on the last season of Skinwalker Ranch, said that there's an underground base there, and they don't know if the military put it there or aliens, and they can't drill through it. And it's the craziest shit I've ever seen on a show in my life. Like, I know it's a show, but there's a lot of government dudes on this show, that's creepy. It creeps me out.
Utah's just weird.
I don't
anyway,
trust the government,
no.
so let's not get into that. But yeah.
I'm just saying.
Well, do you have a ghost story in Utah? Or did you have one? I can't remember.
I did. I don't remember. Off the top of my head, I don't remember.
Did you have a ghost story for Utah?
It was. It was the Purple Lady.
Hold on. Well,
if you can think of any for Florida and Georgia, let me know.
Florida was
also,
the
if you think of
Lighthouse.
any for Florida and Georgia, I was born in Georgia, and I'm in Florida.
Yeah, Florida was the lighthouse, the St. Augustine Lighthouse.
Oh, the Purple Lady was Salt Lake
Purple
City.
Lady was Utah. So it's kind of similar to the white woman narrative, more colorful.
Yeah, she's purple.
Yes,
purple.
But yeah, Florida was the St. Augustine Lighthouse. A ton of just St. Augustine in general, like the whole city's haunted. I could have did a whole book on that, no problem. Georgia. What did we do for Georgia? I don't even remember what I did for Georgia.
Did we do anything? You did something for Alabama.
Georgia,
I did it for everybody. Georgia's there.
Alabama.
Oh, you had to
Alabama
do something
has medicine
for New Orleans.
My dog wants to be part of the interview. So hang on for a second.
There he is.
Arkansas.
Alabama
Kentucky.
has weed now. Can you believe that? I can't believe it.
Alabama? Wow. I'm impressed.
Cute dog.
Oh.
Medicinal.
Rory,
Yeah.
get out of here. The dog's in.
Oh, and of course you have to have one at Bridgeport, Connecticut. It's like,
Yes. That was a fun one, actually. The New England's that's just another area that it's just you couldn't have any more stories, Like every rock you kick, So.
I know. It's just it's an embarrassment of riches.
Yeah.
I mean, here I've talked about this on the show a little bit, but here, where I live, the gym where I go and work out is known to have at least 2 ghosts and the guy who owns the gym, he doesn't own the building. It's the building that's haunted. Um, who has his gym in the building. He has had so many experiences there, and some of them are odd, that he has set up cameras everywhere. Motion detector cameras, and they have picked up some strange things. Um, and sometimes not visual stuff, but just weird noises, like something, the motion detector, and he has it keyed to his phone. So every time one of the cameras goes off, he gets a notification on his phone. And but sometimes like the motion detector camera will go off, but you can't really see anything, but you'll hear these really weird sounds, like weird mechanical sounds, just odd, like you can't, sounds that you really can't identify. I mean, I've had a couple of kind of strange experiences there. I'll be honest, I've been creeped out there a couple times, especially upstairs. Well, there was a guy who, right before the pandemic, we only just found this out. So the gym upstairs abuts a couple on each side, a couple of apartments. And apparently on one side, right before the pandemic, because the pandemic shut the gym down for almost a year, but right before the pandemic, there was a guy who lived in that apartment who died in that apartment and was found dead in that apartment, and everybody hated him that was in the building. He was known as being like a complete asshole. Okay,
definitely gonna be a ghost.
And well, nobody expected there to be a ghost, actually, because his girlfriend, who he lived with at the time, continued to live in the apartment, and in fact moved they had been together, and after he died, she moved his brother in, and then they got together.
Oh, well, now
Okay.
a tragic love story.
Yeah, I know. It's like,
gotta be a ghost.
that would piss
Right.
somebody off, right there. But anyway, none of that story was known until very recently. But what's interesting is some of the experiences that people have had up there. Like this happened just actually a couple weeks ago. He has this one camera that he sets up, and the reason he sets this particular camera up is that it doesn't it malfunctions, and it doesn't it's supposed to take film, but it doesn't. What it does instead is it'll take stills, or you can get it to work live, but it won't record. He's never been able to figure out why this one camera just won't work right. Well, anyway, he had it set up so that it was pointing down the hall into what is kind of the boot camp boxing room. All right, so that you could see it going down the hall, and then you could see the doorway basically of that room. And he was talking downstairs. It was in the evening, early evening. He was talking downstairs to a couple of customers about the kinds of things that were going on, and or because they thought they'd had a couple of weird experiences, because one of the things that everybody experiences upstairs is all of a sudden they think that they'll smell cigar and cigarette smoke, and nobody smokes in the building except that guy smoked in the building, and they'll suddenly smell that. Well, yeah, but anyway, he was showing this customer this camera, and it was live. It was he was showing it live, and while they were watching it, they both saw, and of course it didn't record it, but they both saw a figure walk across the doorway. And it didn't even look like a ghost. It looked like just a person walking across the doorway. And he immediately jumped up, the owner of the gym, and ran upstairs to see if anybody was up there, and nobody was up there. And the direction at which it had walked was towards where that apartment is, although it wasn't where the door is exactly. They would have had to have walked through the wall into the
Right.
apartment, but they both saw it.
Hmm.
They both saw it. And of course, unfortunately, because of the nature of that stupid camera, nothing was recorded. But the fact that they both saw it like live, it just freaked them both out entirely. So I'm actually going to put together a little team, and we're, in the next couple months, and we're going to set up in there and see if we
Oh,
can get
nice.
anything. See if we can get
So,
anything.
so did you do regular investigations?
I don't, not of ghosts
Ah, kitty
typically.
cat.
Not of ghosts typically. Hi, Kitty. Not of ghosts typically. I my investigations have been mostly UFO stuff.
Okay.
I mean, I wrote a I have a doctor's degree in American Cultural Studies, and I did mine on UFO abduction narratives in the United
Okay.
States, but from a sociological perspective, um, and and this was years ago. I mean, my degree, is over 20 years ago when I wrote this thing. So that's where most of my effort has been, is
Okay.
like, the history of UFOs and the importance of that narrative in our culture, and, stuff like that. But, whenever you start talking about this stuff in any group, people start bringing in their other stories,
Sure, it all overlaps, right?
and it all overlaps. And so, and I've had, like I've mentioned, a few odd experiences. So I don't do regular ghost
Right.
investigations, though. I find those to be kind of funny.
I enjoy the kind of on my own wandering around, or the going through the bar, the Bobby Mackey's, where you just had kind of the one person, private tour sort of thing.
Uh-huh.
The group ones, just don't work well for me. There's too much other influence going on, or I don't know, just they get a little weird.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess the way I look at it is that, if there is something there, if there is a residual from this, we think that there's two things going on. We think that there is a residual from this guy that died there. But there was some haunting stuff going on there before that, and that seems to be connected to the man who actually built the building,
Okay.
and who is a member of a very well established family in this part of
And was
the
he the
Hudson
cigar
Valley.
smoker as well?
He's the cigar smoker,
Yeah.
yes, and
So that I thought it was interesting when you brought that up, because at least a few times in the book, I think I've mentioned, smells that people, experience. A lot of times it's cigars or cigarettes, like some hotelier, that
right.
walk
Well,
around with a cigar.
and he was this. He built. This is in a village called Port Ewan in New York, and he basically, his family built half the village, and and was, a major property owner and stuff. And this particular building that houses this gym was one of his favorite buildings for whatever
Right.
reason, and I think one of his descendants owns it now, but so she like knew him, and apparently a lot of the things that happen there are things that are associated with him. Like there are it's like a 2-level building, and the nature of the building itself has changed over time, but always on the south end there were always apartments, and he lived in one of those apartments, and apparently in that apartment specifically, people have reported regularly coming home, and they'll find, even in the wintertime, that the kitchen window will be open about 2 inches, and they'll smell cigar smoke in there. And that's what he used to do. He used to sit in that kitchen at a table by that window, open it, and smoke his cigars.
And that's where a lot of times I think that energy sort of thing comes into play. And there's a few stories. I think Raven's one of them in the book, and was the Georgia one? Anyway, where guys, people are so in love with the place that they're at, or in love with the things that are happening in there, that the idea is that they just hang on right afterwards. Their energy stays there because that's their paradise, right? To
Yeah,
sit in their
that's where,
chair and smoke their cigar or whatever, and or that's the loop. It's just that happiness, that energy that came from that happy moment, right? Is what is the residual that people experience later. Right?
right.
Which
And
those are nicer ghost stories than murder ones and stuff. So.
well, yeah, yeah. Well, and I think too that there are some places, like well, a place that I lived in Kansas called Buck Creek Valley that I recently wrote a blog about, that was kind of a haunted place, but also other places where it's not necessarily a house that's haunted, but like an area that's haunted.
Okay.
Like, I don't know if you are familiar with the a paranormal investigator, Paul Eno, but he's done a number of really, really good, solid field studies of places where people have reported just interesting experiences, not like in a house, but like in a place.
Right.
And there's this one spot, now I can't remember if it's in Connecticut or Pennsylvania, but it's the ruins of a village, or of an early settlement that no longer exists, except that there are some ruins around.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And he talks about this extraordinary experience where he went into this place. A number of people locally had experiences around there, so he and several investigators went into this place, and they didn't really know exactly what they were going to find because they'd heard all these different stories, so they were just going to go and kind of check it out and see if their electromagnetic meters went off, or whatever was going on. And they all reported having, the way he describes it, it was almost as if kind of in pulses, you were see or experiencing aspects of the village when it was still a village, when it was still alive. It's like you could hear horse-drawn wagons, you could hear people talking. It was almost like you were time traveling a little bit.
Okay.
And they were able to record some interesting sounds, and to get some interesting photographs of, because these things, you may experience them, but they never photograph, right? You know how that is. And, damn these ghosts. They just don't stand still. It's like all this shimmering crap, but his description of it is very interesting, because what they had done was spread out over the entire site to just kind of get a sense of the different places. And everybody had slightly different experiences because they were in different parts of this area. Right. But they all had similar kinds of sensory responses, in the sense that they all heard things. They saw some of them saw some things. They were able to get some measurements, and they sort of walked around, and they went back several times to see whether or not it would vary, by season, or if there were other ways you could explain some of what they were experiencing. And they came to the conclusion that they couldn't explain everything.
Right. And that's another really common sort of ghost experience is, ghost, right? Like the old West ghost town, right? It's abandoned, it's empty, you have that residual stuff happening, bat wing doors swinging open and all that kind of good stuff. And it reminded me also of a couple other stories in the book that is kind of a common trope as well, as the native Indian burial ground, or cemetery that got moved. And I'm always wondering, why do people keep building things on dead people? Like, that's a bad idea.
And they do that. They do that. I mean, we just had a situation like that here in Kingston. I live close to Kingston, New York, and there's an African American cemetery in the middle of Kingston. And it was known to be there. I mean, some of the people that were there were enslaved persons, and some of them weren't. But we tend to think of New York as not being a slave state, but slavery existed here for a long time. And even if you weren't enslaved, you were not equal. I mean, segregation was very common throughout New York, even in the city. And so this was a graveyard. And up until just this last year, they were going to dig it up and build over it. But build like condos over it. And I'm just, it was like, what the hell? So finally, a consortium of people, including a lot of people in the African American community here, were able to raise enough money to purchase it, to just purchase the land, so that now it's in private hands. It's in a trust. You can't touch it, but now they can rehab it,
Right.
and take care of it the way it should be taken care of. But it's like, yeah, these graves don't matter. This history doesn't matter. This
place
doesn't
definitely
matter.
would have been haunted by a bunch of black ghosts. That's what would have happened.
It's like all these condos.
We
would have had a whole.
I call that the poltergeist haunting from the movie, right? You never move the bodies.
Oh well, I know that movie. Well, and that movie is full of tropes. I mean, that movie has got some of the classic tropes in it. That's what makes the movie kind of cool.
Yeah, exactly. So I did find Georgia. I had to look. For a minute, I was like, did I miss a state? Like I couldn't find it. So it was Lake Lanier was what I did.
Oh, Lake Lanier, yes.
And more specifically,
I've been there.
Yeah. And that, so the Delia, I'm going to say her name wrong. Parker.
Dahlia.
Delia. Yeah, I'm not sure how to. But that's kind of the cool story, right? That's based on a true story. The car went over. They found the car in 1990, I think it was, when they were redoing the bridge and dug it out. And it's like the blue lady of the lake. We like colorful ladies and ghosts. I mean, like a lot of colorful, purple, white, blue. But that's the story for Georgia. So you've been to Lake Lanier, so if you read that one, it'll be very familiar to you.
Awesome. Oh, I was gonna say real quick that Amblin Entertainment, which is I guess Steven Spielberg's company, just put some UFO show called Encounters on Netflix. I haven't watched it yet, but I would like to. I mean, that's pretty interesting that he has done a whole production. It's like real, like a documentary.
Yeah, that'd be good. Amblin, from Amblin, yeah.
Let's see, 175. I'm going to 175.
So what's in the cards for the future, book-wise? Are you still going to go on the paranormal route more? Or
right now, I'm working on another. So I have my fiction books. I have a series that's sort of a post-apocalyptic zombie mashup spy thriller sort of thing. It's really hard. It's kind of like Jason Bourne meets zombies.
Jason Bourne meets zombies.
Nice.
So there's 2 books out on that right now, and I've been off and on working on. There's probably 2 more books in that series to finish it up. I have another novel I finished last year that I'm shopping right now, and then I just started a new project that I think is going to keep going. A lot of them kind of sputter to a stop, that's probably more often than they don't until you hit the right one. So this one's another novel, a fiction novel. So that's probably going to take the main focus for the next few months. But I have been exploring some other haunted areas. I really may do a book just of Michigan haunts or Midwest haunts. And I'd like to do one where I can go to every location, because those were the funnest stories to write, because you can put your personal experience in. So I'd like to do that. Regional books are a little harder to sell. So we'll see, it might depend a bit on how this book does, whether that's something that I do, and I may just do another 50 states. Like I said, I could probably write 4 more books that are similar to this, a story from each state sort of thing. So if people like it and it's popular, I had a lot of fun doing it. Got a little more interested, and I'm in the the ghost hunting and the investigating, and I'm learning right along with the people that are reading. This is a lot of new stuff for me. So I wouldn't mind doing a couple more.
I just was reading
What's
the
up with
lady,
the Savage Bunnies? That sounds pretty interesting. I saw that too. I was like, Savage Bunnies. What's going on with that?
That's a cover band that I sing and play guitar in. Shout out to those guys if any of them listen. It's Eric on drums and Jason on guitar and Bruce on bass. We're a bunch of old guys that mess around in the basement and then go out every once in a while and play a bar, and it's sort of like the Blues Brothers. By the time we get done, we owe more for our bar tab than what we're getting paid, but it's a fun night out. So.
Yeah, it's. I was
Definitely
just reading the lady in white on Devil's Elbow.
Oh yeah, so that was my friend Chuck sent me that story. He's another horror writer. And that is sort of one of those regional ones that people are familiar with because of the story, because of the trope, but it's just kind of a little more personal for people in that area, and it's an interesting story, but I like it's one of those that I like to throw out that like the Forester and the Miniquay, people right there are really gonna like it.
Right. It's like I know where all these places are.
Right, and it's exactly, and it's sort of it feels like your story, right? Like,
it's like I could drive there,
right?
Because I know exactly where it is. I know exactly where it is. Although I didn't know that was something that was seen there, but but I know exactly where that is. So
I was gonna bring that one up because when you mentioned New York, but I was letting it lie for a little bit. So,
well, it's I wrote. It's been a while. I wrote in 2019. I published a book called "Mysterious Beauty: Living with the Paranormal in the Hudson Valley," and so it's very regional. It's just the Hudson Valley, and it covers like all kinds of different experiences, hauntings, cryptids. But I start out in the book with looking at indigenous stories of unusual things, their own accounts of little people and the beings that they talked about living with, because there are we tend to think of indigenous people as having been driven out of this area, but there actually are people around here there's a whole community of indigenous people that are here, that have never left. And so they still, tell those stories and maintain that. And so then I kind of segue from that into settlement stories and then sort of bringing it up to date. But what's interesting to me about books like that for people who are interested, like you said, in the region, is that I try to frame it so that these are places you could go to.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? You could actually drive through the
same
places.
Thing here. A lot of the stories, very specific of where the location is, or hey, you can take a tour there if you want, or you can do, you can go drive down Seven Hills Road, and see if a demon truck chases you.
See if that ghost light is there, right? I talk about the UFOs that are seen over the Ashokan Reservoir and over Sturgeon's Pool, which is like literally only 4 miles southwest of me, where I'm sitting, and stuff like that. So, the little ghost lights that come up from there sometimes, and that way it sort of makes it kind of real,
Yeah.
These are locations.
Something really quick. 1 second.
Sure.
And I just wanted to say hello to all the people in chat tonight. We've had a few people in chat stopping by. Stefan, Petronek probably messed up that name, but Pasternak. He's asking, and I don't know if you have any that point to mind, but any stories from Pennsylvania or the Erie region? Does anything pop into your mind?
Oh, geez.
That's
What
just from
pops
one
up?
of our dudes in
Okay.
the audience. If
Um,
something comes up, let us know. But that was just an audience question. But
yeah, we
thanks to
did.
everybody
I
in
did
chat, though. Glad to see you guys.
Betsy Ross. I did in Pennsylvania. Was the Betsy Ross house. So that one's a little more was a little more popular. I'm gonna look really quick. Tell you a couple of the other ones that I looked at in Pennsylvania here.
I got to figure out this weird delay thing. It's like something's trying to torture me. It's like Chinese water torture drop to give me a delay. It's like I got to get it fixed before my Halloween lineup. Hopefully my computer will be fixed Saturday. But it's like, what's the one thing we could do to mess with Jeffrey? It's like Chinese water torture or something, like a drop that goes on your face. A delay. Let's do that. A delay.
But the Pennsylvania one, the
that's
Betsy Ross.
we've had quite a few people
right.
in chat and just
Yeah.
What were you saying about
go ahead.
Pennsylvania?
I was say the Betsy Ross one there. That's what I picked there, and that was one that I picked because it was kind of a nice story, and the Betsy Ross legend, whether that's what you believe about that or whatever, is regardless, the house is there,
Right?
So
the house is
was,
there.
It's more of a nice story that this person, just kind of hanging out because they like the place. There wasn't nothing malicious in that one. I was going to share really quickly because we were talking about Chuck's story that he sent me. This is his book, C.W. Breyer. So he put me onto the New York story that's in the book. And he has a few books up. Great guy. You should read his books. New York, local.
Oh, yes. Okay.
And then Patrick Byveld would be another artist there. Yeah, this is a short story collection. He's got some other stuff. He does some fantasy stuff, too. So, cool guy. You should check him out.
I just got the new Holly, Stephen King. I haven't started it yet, but I know it upset a bunch of Trump people for some reason, but I don't care about that. But I'll read it. Holly, I got that.
I'll buy two.
Exactly.
Like
Pissed two people off.
yeah.
Hold on just a second. I got to check something. I'll be right back.
So I haven't got Holly
I
yet.
called Trump.
Could you check to see if it was out there right now?
Okay. I didn't get Holly yet.
It's on my itinerary. I haven't read Fairy Tale yet either. I haven't read Fairy Tale yet.
Yeah, me either. I have actually
But
all the way back
I was going to say I have a group on Facebook called I have a.
The delay's messing me up.
Oh, it's okay. Go ahead.
Okay, so this is going to go a
messing me
up. So all the way back to Billy Summers, I haven't read yet. So I got 3 or 4 stacking up, which is weird because as a Stephen King fan, I'm one of those guys that has every one of his books, and up on my shelf. I'm looking at right up there. But I'm kind of getting to the point where, it used to be I'd read it the first day it came out, and it would be done before, nightfall. But I'm kind of like stacking them up. It sounds kind of shitty, but maybe there's going to be a day when there aren't any more Stephen King books, so I'm going to save a few.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
Sorry
me
about
too.
that.
It's like I'm trying to get a Stephen King. Trying to get a Stephen King collection up in case there's an apocalypse. I need Christine and Salem's Lot, and I'm behind on Billy Summers, Fairy Tale, and Holly. Yeah. But there's some older ones that I've never read. Christine, I'd really love to read that. But if the grid goes down, I really want to have those, So I need to start getting those. But I call Trump Führer Shitbird von Trumpelgooch. Führer Shitbird von Trumpelgooch. That's where I stand pretty much with
that. So. Yeah, we are not Trump lovers on this show.
I don't know.
We've had a few Trump lovers on the show, and it's we have to sort of bite our tongues.
Yeah, usually, creatives, artists, writers, you're usually in safe company. You know what I mean?
Usually, not always.
Every once in a while, not so much, but
not always, but usually.
It's funny. I have
I've had to sit here while a guest was like pretty much. Just want to say real quick. I've had to sit here during a guest that pretty much is glad Ukraine is getting bombed because there's Nazis there, and like is happy about it. Like just like the
It's
weirdest show.
it's a weird world
It's
right
crazy.
now.
But go ahead, Michael.
Go ahead. Say what you're going to say.
I think I have another interview coming up in a week or so that they had sent some pre-questions. This is kind of how it's going to run. And the first thing was, tell me something you hate. And it can be political, it can be whatever, blah, blah, that sort of thing. I'm like, I'm going to alienate half your audience.
I hate Trump.
I don't
hate
need you to buy my
MAGA.
book if you would like to.
I hate MAGA. MAGA
Yeah.
sucks.
So yeah, I'm not selling probably a lot in the red states, but it's okay.
Yeah, well, especially
I use big words and they can't read it anyway. So
well, and they would think things like Dr. Allen that he would be like
Dr. Hart, yeah,
Dr. Hart, it's proof that you're woke.
Yes, which is a weird insult because I'm really grateful when people say it.
Yeah, it's like,
thanks for noticing.
It's like, yeah, what you're basically admitting is that you're asleep. You know what I mean? It's like you think it's okay that you're asleep.
That's weird. It's been a very strange.
That's crazy.
7 years or so.
Been very strange, yes. What is Modelo?
What's that?
What do you know what a Modelo as an occupation is?
I don't think so.
I'm going to look that up.
Modelo?
I'm going to do
is that in his book?
There's Casa Modelo, which is the house of authentic Mexican beer.
I don't remember Modelo.
Modelo is a large brewery in Mexico that exports beers to most countries of the world. So maybe this person works for that company. Modelo is a beer. So that's hilarious. This person said that their occupation is Modelo. Do you work for the company, or is your occupation just beer?
Yeah, I'm a beer.
I'm a beer.
It's Chief Wiggums, Ralphie Wiggums growing up. I'm a beer.
I'm a beer. I'm a beer. I like beer.
I still like beer.
Well, I like beer too, but only certain types and only for a little while.
Oh, yeah.
I like weed.
Yeah, he likes weed. Well, you like.
Hey, Michael, would you ever do cryptids? See, you go to cryptid locations.
I would, and I actually have, and I haven't taken it yet, but I have like a correspondence course thing that's all about like cryptids. So like you get basically like a little degree in cryptology. So
you get a degree?
Yeah, it's like, okay, that sounds cool. So let's say it's like a little like correspondence course or whatever. I'm like, this is great. Like just to learn about all the different ones, or whatever. Like maybe stuff I don't know yet. So. But I haven't got to it yet. I actually just
Might
moved
be good
house.
For a book in the future.
For sure. I'm like, this is one of the only rooms.
We got about 6
minutes.
Ooh.
We got about 11 minutes. We got about 11 minutes. Is there anything from the book you'd like to share, or any story that is like your favorite story ever?
I don't know. I kind of like them all. I don't
or anything
really
like that.
love reading because I don't love how I read. One of the ones I really like is Grace Sherwood, the Grace Sherwood story. That's the Virginia story. And Grace Sherwood was convicted as a witch, and it's a very vengeful sort of story, and I like it because I like Grace. The story of Grace. You kind of if you know the witch stories, right? They're all falsely accused, and she was one that they tried to they tied and did the ducking. So what is now Witch Duck Bay is what it's actually called. And she was the only witch convicted in Virginia. But they ducked her in and she floated. so
Uh-oh.
they're like, oh shit,
She's a witch! She's a witch!
Yeah, exactly.
Turned
Monty
it
Python.
Yeah.
She's got a wart. But that one was fun because it's very vengeful, and then she's sort of she's acquitted, like posthumously. So it kind of gets her her revenge and her innocence restored. So that's a fun story. And I like the Salem story too, even though people are very
got acquitted. She floated and got acquitted.
She got acquitted posthumously. She was dead.
Posthumously, yeah. Posthumously.
So yeah, it was.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it didn't end great at the beginning. Like that part
she had to die first.
Right. Well, and the Salem one was fun to write. It's very familiar for everybody. But I really focused on, rather than the witches, I focused on Corey Giles and getting pressed to death. So that was.
Oh yeah.
That was an interesting story, and I mean that was one that I enjoy that story. It's sort of that the spy that won't talk sort of thing, right? Like you just he's not gonna give in, and let go of his convictions and his faith and whatever. It's like, no, I'm not going to say I'm a witch just because you're going to kill me. But then, of course, he's also dead. So, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, I guess.
Well, I'm just looking at this picture of these guys, and they've tied this old woman up in a chair.
Oh, I thought for the Grace Sherwood story, the picture.
Yeah.
There. So she was actually, they tied her thumbs to her toes.
Yeah, I was reading that.
Yeah, I don't know how she floated, but float she did, apparently.
Well, I guess you could. I mean,
if like dead man's float, maybe sort of. Like
that wouldn't necessarily keep you alive. Yeah.
Right.
The sheriff then tied a 13-pound Bible around her neck to help her sink. Okay, what an asshole. Okay,
yeah. Weren't they all then though? Like that's the story of the witch trials. He's like, all these assholes did this stuff.
And then she managed to free herself.
It's crazy.
Yeah, she was pretty awesome. Like I really like her story.
Well, when I look at this story, when I look at this picture though, it's just kind of terrifying because it's like, all you had to do is like be an old person.
Well, most in the Salem story, there's a lot about it as well. And in this one, she was really like, it was almost always that they didn't like the person, right? Like or they wanted their land, or they were weird. They dressed different, they acted different, or they, had a cat. Like there was something unusual about them. With your black cat, you're done. Sorry, you're obviously consorting with the devil. But it was usually because they wanted their property or something like that, or they were jealous about something, and then all they had to do was say, she's a witch. And then, there were some pretty good judges that would not allow sort of that supernatural testimony and evidence. But then there was others where you could just say, well, I saw her talking to the devil. They're like, oh, good enough.
Good enough, right. Right.
Yeah, it was but I'll alienate some more people. I'm not a religious person, and I find religion extremely harmful. And I was raised a religious person, had a big sort of got away from religion for different reasons I won't go into that are long, but it was a journey from being raised religion to where I am now.
Right.
And it's a long journey and a difficult journey because you're indoctrinated, right? As a kid,
no. I was indoctrinated. I get it. I was raised a very
to try to get away from that is hard, right? But that's a thing that, like I was saying before, kind of ties back to the skeptic thing, is that I just don't accept things at face value very often, So eventually, I was like, this just does not make sense, as I got older, right? And went down that road, but. Religion now I'm kind of actively against, right? Not so much that I just don't like it or I just am not a participant, I'm kind of actively against religion because it's so harmful. And you see it back in like these stories, right, with witches and things like that. It was all religious based. You just said, well, God said she's a devil, so there she goes. And you see it now, right, in our political landscape. so
right.
It's like talking about the last 7 years or so, that's really turned me off even more, to where I was more just a atheist that said, okay, you do what you do and just leave me out of it, to where I'm not like, you should probably stop what you're doing because you're hurting people.
Right. But, no, I understand.
So just get comments on that one. That'll be good.
Definitely.
Well, that's okay. Whatever.
But maybe if I read the UFO God book, I'll have a whole different perspective.
Hey guys, does it seem like I still have a delay?
A little bit. Yeah.
I was testing stuff. Does it still seem like the delay's happening? I've been testing stuff, so it seems like it's still happening. Very annoying. But we got 4 minutes left. What is your first off, I just want to say it's been a very great show. We really appreciate it, and I've really enjoyed it. I was kicking off the Halloween season early, and it's a great show to do that with for sure. We got a killer Halloween lineup coming up that's insane great. Fred Anderson from Sweden on UFO encounters. His book Northern Lights is next Saturday, and then the next Friday is Mark Dezowek, Mystery of Edgar Allan Poe's Death, which is going to be awesome. Mm-hmm. And then after that, Stephen Flowers, Gothic Meditations at Midnight. He's occult breaks down like old silent horror movies and the occult stuff in them, from Nosferatu to all kinds of weird stuff. Maybe some Romero. And then the last show of October is going to be Michael Aliasa, Dark Ink Publishing, darkinkpublishing.com. They have a lot of biographies with horror icons like Kane Hodder, who played Friday the 13th Jason, Gunnar Hansen that played Leatherface in Texas Chainsaw Massacre. This dude's basically going to sit down and tell us about their biographies and their real life and stuff for our Halloween show. So that's badass. I can't wait for that for sure. That's going to be great. And Wham, I don't know, Jay will be here the 6th and the 13th. I don't know if you want to set him for Fred Anderson. If you do, let me know. But I don't know if you also want to sit him on Stephen Flowers. I don't have a co-host for the 20th. Okay, yeah, I'll check in with you in text or whatever.
No, yeah, check in with
me. The 20th is Stephen Flowers, and then Fred Anderson.
Okay. No, I'll check in with you.
And it's been great, Mike. What's your website? I want, and plug whatever you like.
Yeah, just to say, so obviously American Ghost Stories, right? You can get that on Amazon right now. You can find my website at www.MikeKozlowski.com. So easy enough, right? Just Mike Kozlowski. There are more books there. Got my store, got my shop, got my blog. I have a mailing list. There's giveaways. You can find me under that name, M.A. Kozlowski or Michael Kozlowski, on Facebook and Twitter. Links from my website there, so you can find it easily. Would love to have more followers. And I don't just, market myself all day long on Facebook. I'm usually a pretty fun guy. I try to keep it, limited, so I'm not just annoying people all the time.
That's cool.
So, but yeah, well, had a great
we
time.
Appreciate it so much. Fun. And Savage Bunnies, baby. That's right.
That's right.
And
New album, we'll get an album out of original.
Don't have a delay. That would be great.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully your new hard drive will work.
Thanks, Wham. Thanks, everybody. I pray, God, I'll know tomorrow. Please, someone. But thanks, everybody, for listening. You're listening to United Public Radio 107.7. Someone said it's just not really bad delay here, just an occasional echo and pause. So I'm going to listen to it later. I know it's there, but man, it make me crawl out of my skin, this delay. So I pray tomorrow my computer's fixed, so no more dumb delay. The worst thing about all this computer crap, you have to call Joe and reset StreamYard and get a code. And I put it on my other computer, but something happened, so StreamYard couldn't be used on it. So it stayed on the laptop. It's just been chaos. When is this Mercury retrograde shit over? October 2nd, right?
Well, no Mercury retrograde right now. So, but it's about the only planet that isn't retrograde. So
for those New Orleans listeners, we got the La Laurie Mansion story in here, so you'd be familiar with that for the 107 crew out there.
Cool.
oh yes.
So it ended. Mercury retrogrades ended. I thought it ended on the
Oh,
second.
it was
October,
ended. It was
so
ended
it
weeks,
ended.
two,
It's
3
already
weeks
ended?
ago. It's ended.
You had a full moon yesterday,
I
though,
must have
so
looked at the
probably
wrong
No,
crap.
the full moon was actually at
Yeah.
3 a.m. 3
well,
a.m.
okay. See, so there you go. That's probably what it was.
That's what I
Blame it
get
on
for
something
that's
because
what-
we don't know.
That's what I get for Googling.
Ghost in the machine.
Ghost in the machine.
That's what I get. That's what I get for Googling stuff. Googling stoned. That's what I get for looking stuff up fried. All right, everybody, have a good weekend. I'm going to watch that Gen Z, that new boys spinoff show on Amazon. Then there's some weird raw doll, weird little thing on
Yeah,
Netflix.
that
With Benedict Cumberbatch, the dude did Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I want to see that, called Henry Sugar. So I got a lot of stuff to watch, a lot of crap. But everybody have a good weekend. Thanks, Michael. Thanks, Wham. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, Barry.
Hi, Michael. Thank you.
Bye. Nice talking to you.